I don't even know how I gradually became like this. Mr. Parker and I had an illicit affair. A 30-year-old house helper and a 67-year-old man did what they shouldn't have. That night, as Mr. Parker was reading in his study, the lights suddenly went out. I shrieked in panic and ran out. He immediately rushed out and held me tight. "Jane, don't be scared. It's just me." What happened next was a premeditated house. Mr. Pendergat, Nathan Orton, Elliot. Parker panted like an old, frail beast, muttering lewd words. "Jane, don't cry anymore. I'll marry you, okay?" I closed my eyes, gave up, and stopped struggling. In the end, whether it was because the moment was too brief, or his actions too clumsy, his old face flushed with shame. He would never know that I was the one who cut the power, and everything had been meticulously planned by me for a long time, starting from the moment he first stared at me with lustful eyes. I told Mr. Parker I would bear him a son. I enlisted that, then what so? He was so moved that he immediately took out pen and paper and wrote me a will, stating that this house would belong to me after his death. After all, his daughter, Fiona, was only after this house anyway. Sadly, Mr. Parker died the following month. He lay motionless on the floor, eyes wide open, hands clutching his shirt. The ambulance arrived, and after some resuscitation attempts, the cause of death was declared. Uncontrolled blood pressure due to not taking his medication on time, leading to a sudden aortic dissection. My heart, which had been suspended in my chest, slowly relaxed. Fiona burst in and immediately attacked me, a group of people unable to stop her. She cursed me. "You shameless bitch, did you kill my father?" He runs to the hospital for the slightest issue. He's very careful with his life. How could he not take his medicine on time? In front of the police, I revealed my entire relationship with Mr. Parker. He wanted me to bear him a son. He was afraid the medication would affect his body, so he stopped taking all his pills on his own. "You bitch! My father is almost 70. How could he possibly have a child with you?" Fiona spat directly into my face. The police handed her the will from the evidence bag. "This is the will found in your father's drawer. The handwriting and fingerprints perfectly match, meaning she has the right to inherit this house after his passing." Fiona's eyes widened. She snatched the will and read it from beginning to end. Then suddenly burst out laughing. She also pulled another will from her bag. "Here's out, but I can't know in says. Officers, look. This will my father wrote for the house helper is dated the 8th. But this one, I went with him to notarize on the 10th. Legally, mine is the valid one." I looked up, tears blurring my vision, unable to believe it. That wretched old man had 2 wills. Fiona looked at me with triumph. "Did you think you'd get a 4-story house just by sleeping with my father a few times? He was just playing with you. Fine, I won't pursue this any further." She threw all my belongings out, changed the locks, and then gleefully made a call. Honey, Dad was such a cunning devil. He wrote a will in front, to trick that stupid house helper into taking care of him, but then secretly took the notary. We need to buy Dad a good tomb, organize a lavish funeral, and make money decorating this house. What are you waiting for? Get out of here. Looking at Fiona, I wanted to rush forward and stab her to death. But in the end, I could only drag my sack of belongings like a dog kicked out of its hole. I watched the sunset outside, as if waking from a foolish dream. Fiona wasn't wrong. I was the one who caused Mr. Parker's death. I heard that his medication affected the body, so I replaced the powder in his capsules with vitamin C powder, never imagining it would take his life. I thought the house was mine. Who knew he also had a trick up his sleeve? I was thrown out without a single penny. Oh, I truly lost everything. What a waste of effort. When Mr. Parker's body lay lifeless on the floor, I was so scared I dropped my glass of milk. I knew he would die, but I never expected it to be so soon. Whether Mr. Parker could have a son, I don't know, but I certainly couldn't. My ex-husband divorced me because I couldn't bear children. I hate those scoundrels who treat me like dirt, and I don't want to be deceived by old men anymore. Everyone just wants to take advantage. Leaving someone as a vegetable is less trouble. I can't keep being bullied, can I? I looked up at Mrs. Lee, smiling as I asked. Of course, she couldn't answer because she had been bedridden for 5 years. From the neck down, she couldn't move. Her cataract-clouded eyes could only roll around, but she couldn't see clearly, nor could she hear well. She was just barely clinging to life, trying to prove she was still alive. Mrs. Lee was 80 years old. If it weren't for the fall down the stairs that left her completely paralyzed, she would have been a healthy old woman. She gave birth to 3 successful sons, but none of them wanted to live with their elderly mother. Everyone had their reasons. Bad mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relations, a new baby at home, cramped space, her being a bit muddled in the head. In short, they couldn't live together. Mrs. Lee was like a deflated ball, politely kicked back and forth by her children. Eventually placed in a nursing home. She didn't like the food there and demanded to go home, then was hit by a car on the street. Her children sued the nursing home for a year and received compensation, using that money to hire someone to care for her. My salary was quite good. I lived alone with Mrs. Lee in her old house. A 3-bedroom house where she had raised her 3 sons alone, only to end up living with a helper like me. I liked Mrs. Lee. She didn't speak. She didn't complain. I could eat whatever I wanted, say whatever I wanted. Her cloudy eyes rested on me, a faint smile appearing. I fed her, cleaned her, tidied up, bathed her, and sunned her. In this big house, it was just the 2 of us relying on each other. Mrs. Lee liked listening to songs. I liked watching romance movies. We sat on the same sofa, each watching for an hour, perfectly fair. Caring for Mrs. Lee was very liberating. At first I woke up at 7 a.m., but then I realized no one cared if I woke up at 8, 9, or 10. I turned off my alarm clock and slept until I woke naturally. Because Mrs. Lee couldn't speak, at most she'd babble. Even when her children visited, sometimes she couldn't make a sound. This made me even more relaxed. I woke up, brushed my teeth, washed my face, drank milk, and ate eggs, then leisurely entered Mrs. Lee's room, drew the curtains, and told her it was 7 a.m. No matter what time it actually was, I always lied and said it was 7 a.m. I scooped a basin of water, removed her diaper, turned her over to wipe her back, did a few eye exercises to prevent bed sores, helped her sit up, leaned her against the headboard, and cupped my hands to pat her back from below to loosen phlegm. Everything took half an hour. I gave her some warm water, cut up my leftover fruit into small pieces, and put them in her mouth. I'd shout, "Mrs. Lee, time for fruit. Chew it up." Most of the groceries I ate myself. Mrs. Lee's shriveled body couldn't hold much. Mrs. Lee wore dentures. Since she was so frail, she couldn't get new ones. I had to mash her food into tiny pieces and spoon-feed her. She ate like a child. I had to lean in close, enthusiastically calling out, "Mrs. Lee, open your mouth." Her eyes darted around. I knew she heard me. I immediately pressed the spoon against her lips, gently pushed, and her mouth opened slightly. I quickly slipped in the soft rice. "Chew it now, chew, chew. If you want water, blink your eyes." My voice would naturally rise. Whether she blinked or not, it was always 5 spoonfuls of rice, 2 spoonfuls of water. If she didn't like a dish, Mrs. Lee would tightly shut her mouth, neck stiff, staring at me. I'd have to patiently explain, "Mrs. Lee, you have to eat your vegetables, right? If you don't eat vegetables, you can't have a bowel movement. Don't just think about pork hock stew. It'll only give you indigestion." She was prone to constipation, and if she had trouble, I'd have to put on gloves and manually remove each hard piece of stool. After she finished eating, I'd push her wheelchair to the window for her to sunbathe. To prevent her from falling, I used a wide strip of cloth to tie her securely to the chair. Once, I got engrossed in watching TV, and when I remembered Mrs. Watching Lee, she had a high fever from the scorching sun. It's truly wonderful when someone can't speak. I sunned her, submerged her, starved her. As long as there were no obvious wounds, no one would know. Watching her sit silently in her wheelchair, sometimes I'd suddenly slap her. Smack! A crisp sound. Ah! Smack! Yeah! I'd slap her back, and her head would obediently return to its original position. When bored, I'd hit her face for fun, watching her gaunt, grey head bob like a roly-poly dog. For no reason at all, simply because I was sad. I liked Mrs. Lee like I used to like an ugly straw doll when I was a child. Hollow, heartless, lifeless. Sometimes I'd turn around and see Mrs. Lee with tears in her eyes. I'd hold her hand and comfort her. "Don't be scared. I'm here. What's the big deal about living or dying? You still have sons. I have nothing. I do these pathetic things just to save up money for old age. I won't let you suffer. I lost my mother at 16. I see you as my mother. A woman's life is suffering. Suffering in marriage, suffering in childbirth, suffering in old age. Better to just die." Mrs. Lee stared at me, a fleeting look of terror in her eyes. I knew Mrs. Lee was afraid of me. I liked her being afraid of me. Making others fear you is a skill, let alone an old woman who couldn't speak. She lived because I cared for her. Without me, she'd be a rotting pile of flesh. I truly liked her and wanted to serve her until her death. If I hadn't met David, perhaps my life would have drifted along peacefully like that. A young man just over 20, David, knocked on the door. Sister, I'm a barber. Today, we have a free haircut program for residents. He was tall and fair-skinned, with thick, large eyes, like my idol. I opened the door and invited him in. He cut Mrs. Lee's hair first, and one snip made her ear bleed. He looked at me in a panic, but I turned my face away, pretending not to see. When he finished, he enthusiastically washed my hair, then cut it. His skills were still raw, but his voice was warm. You're really good to your mother, sister. Nowadays, most bedridden elderly are sent to nursing homes, but you take care of her yourself. I glanced at Mrs. Lee and smiled. My mother and I are very close. So, you two live in this big house. You must be under 28. Are you married yet? This new haircut really suits you. David's hand rested on my neck, and he leaned down to whisper in my ear, making me feel a flush of heat from head to toe, dizzy. Words flowed out of me without thinking. My mother only has me, so I'm not married yet. I'll wait until I've taken care of her. David looked directly at me in the mirror, and I met his gaze, our eyes intertwining. He said, "You're so beautiful." His voice was like an underground spring, subtly drowning me. Lying is like a net. Once you start, you have to keep going. David and his apprentices rented a room downstairs. He often came up to bring me conditioner or essential oils, and occasionally cut Mrs. Lee's hair. He'd cut her hair unevenly, and then claim it was a popular French style. I started keeping him for meals since he didn't charge for haircuts. When he was there, I treated Mrs. Lee as gently as if she were my own daughter. I no longer tied her with the cloth strap. Sometimes she'd fall, and David would be quicker than me, rushing to catch her. Both of us pretended not to see Mrs. Lee's tears, still laughing and joking cheerfully. While washing dishes, David took my hand. "Sister, your cooking is so delicious. Anyone who marries you would be truly blessed." I looked at Mrs. Lee, half fallen on the sofa, then back at David, who smiled shyly. "A family of 3 like this is truly perfect." David increasingly poured sweet nothings into my ear. He kissed me, praised me for being young, beautiful, having a good figure, being capable. No one had ever praised me like that. I loved David. He was the first person to make me understand that intimacy wasn't roughness, but could be love and tenderness. At 30, I was like someone accustomed to vegetarian food suddenly tasting something savory. I was going crazy for him. I wanted him by my side to cook for him, to do everything to please him, even things that made me lose myself. I constantly demanded sweet words from him, like an idiot who always got zeros, suddenly realizing that life's test was completely flawed and not their fault. I was like a lovesick fool, pouring all my attention into David, too lazy to turn Mrs. Lee over to feed her or bathe her. I neglected her on the bed, letting waste overflow her diaper for 2 or 3 days before changing. The music channel wasn't on anymore. I was immersed in love, crying and laughing at the same time. When David didn't come, I grew bored. I pushed Mrs. Lee into the bathtub and scrubbed the whole body until it was red. All the while, I kept calling David, but he always hung up. I applied thick powder to Mrs. Lee's face, rouged her cheeks, and drew bright red lips. In the mirror, two faces, one old and one young, appeared exactly alike. David still didn't answer. Tears streamed down my face. So did Mrs. Lee's. I turned on music and made Mrs. Toto Lee dance around the room, tied with the cloth strap. She could only lower her head as I made her sway wildly. David said he would take me dancing. I had to practice well. I held Mrs. Lee's two hands high, the booming music echoing, as if following my own hopeless future. I didn't know if David had driven me mad or if I was inherently mad. I cried for a long time, and David finally arrived. He told me to push Mrs. Lee into her room first, then smoked and lamented. He was poor and had no money. His mother was sick at home, and his sister was still in college. As a barber apprentice, he didn't earn much. Friends had introduced him to work at a club where there were many rich women. For his mother and sister, he was preparing to sacrifice his love and youth. He said, "Sister, I love you, but I need money." I lay in his arms, soaking his chest with my tears, then wiped them away and said, "Don't go, I have money." Hearing that, he immediately tossed his cigarette, tenderly lifting my face. "Sister, I can't do those shameless things. I want to be with you forever." That night, we clung to each other, inseparable. Laughter and music filled the house, completely forgetting Mrs. Lee's existence in the next room. He poured wine into my mouth. Music blared at full volume. In my head, there was only exhilaration and liberation. After so many years of suppression, always feeling lower than a chicken, under the instigation of this man, I went completely insane. David left. The room was a mess, with only cigarette butts and wine bottles remaining. I turned off the noisy music, sat on the sofa, buried my face, and sobbed uncontrollably for no reason. I entered Mrs. Lee's room. She lay gasping on the bed. I pulled back the blanket. Her mattress was soaked with waste, and a foul smell assailed my nostrils. I shook her. "Mother, Mother." She took a few shallow breaths, opening her eyes to look at me lifelessly. I blew my nose, slapped myself hard, and cursed myself for being inhuman. "Mother, Mother, forgive me. I'll clean it up right away. Please don't be angry." She blinked. I tried to help her up and into the bathroom, but those days of indulgence had exhausted me. Just as I reached the bathroom door, I stepped on a wine bottle. Both of us fell. Mrs. Lee rolled over onto her back, eyes wide open, muttering faintly. Then she went silent. My ankle was sprained. I frantically called David, telling him to come immediately. I didn't dare touch Mrs. Lee. I went into the bedroom, threw the soiled mattress into the washing machine, endured the pain to clean the floor and throw out the trash. When a sleepy David came upstairs, I had already moved Mrs. Lee into the bathtub. "Your mom smells terrible. Maybe hire a helper?" David held his nose. "Your mom is really inconvenient here. It's best to put her in a nursing home." I tested the water temperature, avoiding the bed sores, and gently wiped Mrs. Lee's wrinkled body. I didn't know where she had fallen. I saw no wounds or blood. I just knew that one day I too would be old, ugly, and helpless like this, drowning in my own waste. Without children, without money, unable to hire a caregiver, I would rot to death in silence. Now, even my savings for old age were completely gone. People like me were destined to be homeless in old age. I asked David for help to lift Mrs. Lee onto a clean bed and change her clothes. She wasn't dead. Her breath was faint. Perhaps she had only fainted. I looked at David, who was leaning against the door with a look of disgust. I was about to say something when the landline rang. I snatched the phone like I'd been electrocuted. Mrs. Lee's second son was passing through on a business trip, had an hour free, and intended to visit his mother. He was already at the door, telling me to open it immediately. Without thinking, I grabbed David's hand and shoved him into the wardrobe. I regulated my breathing, then opened the door with a humble smile. The elegantly dressed second brother frowned as he looked at me. "Why is the floor so wet?" "Mrs. Lee just fell asleep. I took the opportunity to clean the house." I tried to act normal, despite my aching foot, secretly bracing myself against the wall for support. He walked to the bed, bent down, and called out, "Mother, I've come to visit you." "Jane, why is my mother so thin? How has she been eating lately?" "She's still a bit constipated. I don't dare give her too much meat for fear of indigestion. Lately, she's been eating a lot of fruits and vegetables." I tried to keep her diet light. Each step felt like walking on knives. I had to secretly lean my hand against the wall. He pulled back the blanket, glancing at the clean bed. Mrs. Lee's mouth moved slightly, her eyes blinking open. "Oh, Mother, did I wake you?" Mrs. Lee frowned, a phlegmy groan escaping her throat. She tried to say something but couldn't, only looked at her son as 2 tears rolled down her cheeks. "Why is my mother crying?" the second brother exclaimed. "It's been a long time since you visited. Mrs. Lee is happy to see you." I was in so much pain that I broke out in a cold sweat, yet I still smiled and used a tissue to wipe her tears. She stared at me, her nostrils flaring, then looked at her son, her throat moving, but nothing came out. "What is my mother saying?" "Can you tell me?" the second brother asked impatiently. I slowly bent down close to Mrs. Lee's mouth, then looked up at him and gently fabricated a response. "She says, 'My son is here.'" The second brother sighed in relief, holding his mother's hand. "Mother, I know you understand everything, even if you can't move." "Mom, I'm very busy. I have a flight to catch. I'll visit you next time." "Jane, I'm leaving everything here to you. If anything unusual happens to my mother, please call me." He gave me 300 yuan. I knew he was worried about the house. Even if it was old, it was still worth 800,000 to 1,000,000 yuan. The second brother pressed his head against his mother, smiled, took a photo together, and posted it on social media. No matter how old a man gets, in his mother's eyes, he's still a child. As soon as he posted it, he seemed to have completed an important task and happily rushed off. As the door closed, I collapsed onto the floor. My back was drenched in cold sweat. I took a few deep breaths, braced myself against the wall to stand, and dragged myself into Mrs. Lee's room. A slap, a direct slap, sent me stumbling and falling. Damn it, didn't you say you were this old woman's daughter? Why did that guy call you Jane? So you're just a house helper. I didn't realize you were even better at deception than I am. I knelt, tears streaming endlessly, trying to reach out to him to explain. But he recoiled in disgust. You played the rich lady. I thought you had money. I should have just become a gigolo instead. Damn it. Sleeping with a house helper. What a waste of time. I resentfully clung to his waist, crying. You said you loved me. You said you wanted to marry me. I spent all my money on you. Shut up. Look at yourself in the mirror, rolling around in waste all day. Your fingernails still reek. The few bucks you gave me aren't even worth a meal with my rich friends. I should have just slept with the old woman instead. At least the house would have been hers. When I came to my senses, I had grabbed David's collar, stood up, and slapped him across the face. David was stunned. He lunged, grabbed my hair, and slapped me repeatedly across the face. Still not satisfied, he grabbed my collar and dragged me into the bathroom, turning on the cold shower. Water poured down. David cursed. You ugly devil, how dare you trick me? Does this face deserve to be slept with? He pushed my head into the bathtub, yelling, Die! When I woke up, David was gone. I struggled to stand up from the soaking wet floor, my entire body aching. I fumbled around until I found my prosthetic eye. The woman in the mirror looked like a one-eyed plucked chicken, her empty eye socket making her look like a homeless, hungry ghost. I calmly put on my prosthetic eye, changed clothes, dried my hair, and dragged myself to Mrs. Lee's bed, stroking her silver hair. Mother, you've acted too much. I can no longer distinguish between real and fake. You're like the mother I lost at 16. Mother, you see, that's how men are. Even your sons. The eldest brother traveled through here, but didn't even bother to visit. The second brother came tonight, and the first thing he did was take a photo to show off his filial piety, when in reality he was only concerned about money. The third brother came several times before, rummaging through the house looking for valuables, suspecting his mother was hiding antiques for his two older brothers. Mother worked so hard to raise 3 children, yet in the end, no one truly cared for her. I hugged the pillow with a new cover, looking at Mrs. Lee, filled with indignation. Mrs. Lee seemed to sense something. Her cloudy eyes widened. A rattling sound came from her throat, and her head slowly swayed. Unable to bear looking at her face, I cried and gently placed the pillow over her face. She seemed to struggle, her head tilting, dislodging the pillow. Ah! She stared at me, mouth agape, breathing heavily. Mother, I have to go now. Don't rely on your children anymore. You're just a burden to them. I can't let you live in misery. Living is more painful than dying. I'm doing this for you, helping you find liberation. I gritted my teeth, pressed the pillow onto her face, and sat on it. She seemed to struggle weakly. I felt like I was sitting on a cushioned rock, crying and wailing. That old man tricked me. I tricked the young man, so no harm done, right? I can't stay here anymore, Mother. I have to take you away. I don't know how long I sat there, only seeing the sun outside the window gradually set, red like a severed blood clot. I stiffly stood up, collapsing by the bed. The pillow was completely distorted, like a piece of fabric, covering Mrs. Lee's head. I frantically pulled the pillow away. Mrs. Lee's eyes were wide open, her mouth agape from lack of breath, dry tears and saliva on her face. The pillow bore the imprint of her desperate shape in her dying moments. I held her and sobbed uncontrollably, unsure if it was remorse or liberation. I rocked her body, crying until I choked. I knelt by the bed, slapping myself ceaselessly, cursing myself for being inhuman and animal. At that moment, I felt like I was 16 again, the images of my mother and Mrs. Lee overlapping. That year, my mother fell from a cliff while cutting grass for the pigs. The village doctor said she couldn't be saved, or maybe we could try taking her to a big city doctor. I had no money to take my mother to the city for treatment. She was in so much pain, her spine completely broken, as if she was exerting all her last strength, lying on a torn mat, screaming in agony. I finished my homework to her harrowing cries. The following year, my family also had no money to send me to school. I spoon-fed her rice. She was in so much pain that she broke the bowl, flailing her chopsticks wildly, accidentally stabbing me in the eye. Both in pain and sadness, I didn't dare touch the chopstick, letting the blood flow down my face along it. My child, let me die. It hurts too much. My mother was in so much pain, she rolled off the bed, dragging her blood-soaked body outside. I knew she wanted to jump into the river. Every time she wanted to die, she'd scream that she wanted to jump into the river. I pushed a wheelbarrow, taking my mother to the river bank. Then I fainted. When I woke up, the village doctor removed the chopstick from my eye, telling me that my eyeball had been punctured. When my mother was pulled from the water, a smile of liberation bloomed on her face. I held Mrs. Lee's hand and told her this secret. If living is only suffering, then dying is better. I was sure I wasn't wrong. I was helping Mrs. Lee. She would forgive my intentions. I removed the pillowcase, shredded it with scissors, and flushed it all down the toilet. I put the pillow back under Mrs. Lee's head, wiped the stains from her face, and gently closed her wide-open eyes. I didn't dare look into her eyes. I knew they were Mrs. Lee's unclosable eyes, but her mouth wouldn't shut. Looking into that gaping mouth, her throat was pitch black, like a path leading to hell, pitch dark with no end. I pulled the blanket over her, tears flowing again. In my chest there was a large hole, wind blowing through it, then back again. The whistling wind. I knew that, from today, a part of me had also died with Mrs. Lee. That night, David was smoking on the rooftop, slipped, and fell to his death on the concrete. That night was like a slow unfolding feast for death. The next morning, I frantically called Mrs. Lee's second son, telling him that Mrs. Lee was gone. I then called the eldest and third sons, crying as I reported the truth, that the second son had visited last night, and afterwards Mrs. Lee had passed away. That afternoon, the three sons finally gathered. Seeing Mrs. Lee lying peacefully on the bed, they gave me 1,000 dong and told me to bathe her and change her into burial clothes. My grief was so genuine that no one suspected me. As I changed Mrs. Lee's clothes, I mumbled to her to rest in peace. to be reborn early, and in her next life, not to be a woman, not to be a mother again. It's too much suffering and meaningless. Mrs. Lee's body was incredibly light, just a skeleton. I wasn't scared at all. I only worried if anyone would dress me in burial clothes on the day I died. The three brothers discussed for a long time in the living room. Occasionally, I heard snippets of arguments about the house. Everyone fell silent when the funeral home staff arrived. Mrs. Lee's body was taken directly to the funeral home, cremated, and her funeral held all at once. I only worked 3 days this month, but the three brothers paid me a full month's salary and then dismissed me. I looked at the photo we took together on my phone and smiled. After seeing Mrs. Lee off, just like the second brother, I intimately pressed my head against Mrs. Lee's, a loving smile on my face. Hickey and my feelings for her were forever captured in that photograph. I gradually became bolder, specializing in caring for elderly people who had lost mobility. Their filial children would hand over money and entrust the lives of their elderly parents to me. There was an unwritten rule in elder care. If the elder died before a full month of service, I would still be paid for a full month. This was called auspicious death compensation. Therefore, I always chose to act at the beginning of the month. No, this isn't called murder. It's called helping someone on their way. These elderly people, stripped of their dignity and mobility, should have been liberated long ago. Living was just a burden to their children and grandchildren. Even though these filial children didn't say it, I knew their faces were full of dissatisfaction. Yet they were bound by custom to deal with their parents' dwindling lives. Almost all children, upon hearing the news of an elder's passing, didn't shed tears of grief, but let out a sigh of relief. They completely disregarded the cause of death, happily gave me some money for my trouble, and quickly called the funeral home to take the body away as if hauling a costly pile of trash to be incinerated. Saving a life wasn't worth the money. It was just a waste. Gradually, I suspected that the children who hired me merely wanted to quickly get rid of their stubborn elders. My savings for old age slowly accumulated. Once on the street, I saw someone who looked very much like David, arm in arm with an innocent-looking girl, whispering words of love. As I walked past, I smiled. He glanced at me with disgust, as if I were a pile of dog excrement he wanted to avoid. That night, I pushed David off the roof. I lured him up there, telling him I'd give him money and begging him not to break up. David immediately agreed, smoking and hugging me, whispering sweet words. I listened, tears streaming down my face, deeply moved. As soon as he finished, I stepped forward and pushed him down. I liked watching police movies. I knew not to leave fingerprints. The cigarette butt in his hand, in the darkness, was like a shooting star, falling onto the hard concrete with a desperate scream. It was the only love of my life. But it shone with a dazzling twilight glow, not because it was beautiful, but because I lived in an eternal night and had never seen anything like it. Thus I became immersed in that brief and illusory love. My profession grew more proficient. At most, I'd work for a month, then choose the right moment to act. Even the elderly, who still had some mobility, gradually weakened under my devoted care. My payment was calculated daily. My timing was like the king of hell's death warrant, taking lives precisely on schedule. The following August, I took on a case to care for a bedridden old woman. She only had one married daughter whose children were in school, so no one could care for her. They had to leave her in the old house and hire a helper. I heard all sorts of excuses. I'd verbally agree, saying everyone had difficulties and that the elderly didn't want to bother their children. But inside I smirked. You speak so elegantly, but aren't you just hoping the old person dies soon so you can live comfortably? Fearing unforeseen circumstances, I had installed cameras in the house. I heard this line as if I hadn't heard it at all. I chose the 5th day of the month, a clear, cloudless day, preparing to send her on her way. As usual, I placed a new pillowcase over her face, calmly sat on it, fanning myself while talking to her. I forget everything I said, but it was generally about my miserable fate. Parents dying early, being deceived by men, having no one to rely on, destined to be uncared for in old age. I told her to rest assured as she departed that these unfilial children were not worth clinging to die early, be reborn early, and restart her life. After finishing everything, I expertly cleaned the scene, whistling as I mopped the floor. The police and her daughter burst in, pinning me to the ground. The police cuffed my hands, leaving me unable to move, my face pressed against the wet floor as I stared blankly at the crowd pouring in. The police took photos, collecting evidence. The old woman's daughter handed a video to the police. She lunged at me, hitting me and questioning, "Are you even human? My mother was just an old woman who couldn't move. How could you bear to kill her?" The police pulled her away, saying, "Don't get agitated. She will be punished by law." I was surprised. "You hired me, wasn't it to send your mother on her way?" She slapped me hard. "You animal! I wanted my mother to live to 100. She hugged the old woman's body. Watching her cry for a long time, I still couldn't distinguish if her grief was real or fake. I was completely bewildered, muttering, "What did I do wrong? Didn't you hire me to kill her? Why didn't you visit once or twice a month? Why did you sigh in relief when the old person died? Isn't this an unwritten rule? If you don't want to care for an elder, you hire a nanny to kill them. Isn't that the default?" The old woman's daughter screamed, lunging forward fiercely. "I'll make you pay for my mother's life, you evil wretch. My mother raised me alone, working so hard to send me to college. When my husband died, she felt sorry for me, raising my child and caring for her at the same time. She secretly went to a nursing home, determined not to live with me. If she hadn't been paralyzed, she wouldn't have come back. My daughter has gone to the dorms. I was going to bring my mother home. My mother and I always relied on each other. She promised to live to 100. I haven't taken her traveling yet. She kept mentioning wanting to see Tiananmen Square. Give my mother back to me." I let her pull my hair and slap my face. It was strange. I didn't feel any pain. 2 police officers had to combine their strength to pull her away, her face contorted in extreme anguish. Before leaving, she bit my hand like an enraged, wounded animal. I looked at the old woman's body, then at the woman who was crying herself hoarse. Their eyes were so similar. The old woman's bedside was covered with photos of her and her daughter. From infancy to adulthood, the child grew up, and the mother's hair gradually turned gray. Time was truly cruel. If my own mother were alive now, her hair would be white too. Suddenly, I couldn't remember my mother's face. Could it be that this time I had truly chosen the wrong person? This old woman shouldn't have died. She hadn't even been to Beijing yet. I took out my phone from my pocket, intending to delete the photos I took with the old woman, but a police officer snatched it away. He flipped through each photo, a look of horror on his face. The old woman's daughter and another police officer also rushed over. In the photos, I was face to face, head to head, with over 20 elderly people in intimate poses. I smiled brightly like a flower, while their eyes were tightly closed. I was like a truly filial child, framing the last moments of their lives and the moment of their murder. Ao, pa, eli, nia.